Yes, let's begin SA 620 using the work of an auditor's expert. Even in this standard also, they have clearly stated the auditor has sole responsibility for the audit opinion expressed. This responsibility is not reduced by the auditor's use of work of an auditor's expert. So this responsibility will not be reduced. Remember, there are various standards which are governing this point specifically. See, 220, it says the engagement partner has complete responsibility for the opinion expressed. The fact that you are using article assistants, you are using paid assistants, you cannot shift them the responsibility. You cannot say my article did mistake, not me. Yes or no? You have taken the fees, not him. Okay. Then 500. In that, there is a point regarding management expert. 500 talks about management expert usage. Even if you are using the work of management expert, if at all, you are using their workings, still you are only ultimately responsible. 610, even if you are using the work of internal auditor, you are only ultimately responsible. 620, even though you are using the work of auditor's expert, you are only responsible. 580, you are taking written representations from management for various things, still you are only responsible for the opinion that you are expressing. You should give opinion so only after you convince that it is true and fair. And whatever you convinced, right, you should be able to prove how you convinced. Documentation is your responsibility. Able to understand? So all these standards says you are ultimately responsible. Whereas 299, joint auditors have divisible responsibility. 600, principal auditor and component auditors have divisible responsibility. These two standards are saying divisible responsibility. These 5 standards are saying the ultimate responsibility is with the external auditor. Got clarity? This is a summary that you need to remember. No need to remember, just understand, try to understand. First of all, who is an expert? Can we call somebody as expert if they say we are expert in accounts and audit who are not from CSEMA background? Obviously, we don't agree. Yes or no? Because we believe that we are experts in accounts and audit, whether we know it or not. Honestly, that's what even standard says. Expert is a person having specialized skill or talent in any field other than accounts and audit. If that expert work is used by management for preparation and presentation of financial statements, if the expert work is used by management for assisting them in preparation and presentation of financial statements, we call him as management expert. Auditor's expert, if a person having specialized skill or talent in any field other than accounts and audit, whose work in that field is used by auditor for obtaining sufficient and appropriate evidence. Most of the students, they study only up to management, only up to auditor. They don't read the subsequent part. They'll give you a MCQ. Which of the following statement is true? An expert work used by management. A person's who is expert in any field other than accounts and audit, whose work in that field is used by management for obtaining sufficient and appropriate evidence. B, for preparation and presentation of financial statements. That is correct answer. So they'll give you confusing. So you need to read entire definition always up to the last point. Getting it? If an expert work is used by management for preparing financials, we call him as management expert. If an expert work is used by auditor, auditor's objective is what? Ultimately, whatever procedure we do, ultimate objective is what? To get evidence, to get reasonable assurance. So for obtaining sufficient and appropriate evidence, you see, that's what. So an individual, expert is an individual, or it may be an organization, a law firm. It may be a lawyer or it may be a law firm. Getting the point? Possessing expertise in a field other than accounting and audit, for example, law. Getting it? Whose work in that particular field in the law is used by auditor to assist the auditor in obtaining sufficient and appropriate evidence. And this expert, like auditor's expert, it can be either internal expert or external expert. In our firm, only one of the partner is a law graduate. Getting it? So I want to take a conclusion on some pending litigation. Whether it's a contingent liability or a provision is required, I want to take a conclusion on that. So I can approach my internal lawyer, internal expert who is a law graduate. Getting it? If I don't have like that, or if I want a better evidence, I can go for external law firm, which is not related to my firm. So we call him as external expert. Remember, Auditor's internal expert means your partner or your firm or network firm or partners of network firms. All of them comes under internal experts. Even network firm related, another firm advice you have taken, that will also come under internal expert. External expert means what? You or your network firm don't have any connection with that particular party. Then we call him as what? External expert. Who is a management expert? He is also an individual, or it may be an organization possessing expertise in any field other than accounts and audit, whose work in that field is used by entity to assist the entity in preparing financial statements. See how clearly they have drafted? Yes or no? No. So the auditor has sole responsibility for audit opinion expressed. This will never be reduced by use of work of auditors expert or even management expert for the matter. Even SA 500 says that. Now, why we need an expert assistance? Simple, we are not familiar in everything. Suppose a pending litigation is there, we don't understand legal terminology. Suppose you try to read a document in the, any Supreme Court judgment or High Court judgment or tribunal related judgments, you check. You can't understand the terminology completely. You can't interpret the status of the case by reading that particular case document. You can't understand exactly. So take the help of a lawyer. That is one example. Another example. In some entities, valuation of inventory is not that easy, especially work in progress. How do you value? How do you decide stage of completion? Suppose a company is manufacturing air conditioners. As on 31st March, some air conditioners are pending. They are in work in progress. How do you evaluate what is the percentage of completion of the air conditioner? You don't know how to technically evaluate the percentage of completion. Production manager will say some percentage. Getting it? But you are not able to believe him. So because work in progress stage of percentage completion will affect the valuation of inventory. Because overheads allocation, all that is based upon percentage of allocation, percentage of completion. Getting it? So stage of completion is very important. So take help of that expert, engineer expert in that field, whoever is there. Some companies, they maintain oil reserves. Suppose you are doing audit of IOCL, Indian Oil Corporation Limited. They have crude oil reserves. They have underground crude oil reserves. So many, like what, gallons of crude oil is there. You want to measure how much exactly is there. How do you measure? Because the tank shows some number. Digitally, some number is shown. How do you know that management manipulated it? So there are so many occasions where we require experts' assistance. Getting it? So now, that's what. So these are the various reasons where experts' assistance is required for valuation of inventory, for valuation of provisions, for valuation of contingencies, all that. So many reasons. Getting it? Now, so what are the factors for determining need of an expert? Remember, here the question, it can be either auditor's expert or management expert, whatever it is. First of all, why you require an expert? On what basis you say that you require an expert? This answer is different. This question is different. There is another question. Considerations when deciding whether to use an auditor's expert. Considerations, factors, both are same. So what are the factors? What are the factors that influence your decision regarding use of auditor's expert? That question is different. What are the factors that determine? What are the factors that help you to determine need of an expert? First of all, do I need an expert? Suppose I need an expert. Already management has employed an expert. I can use his workings if possible. I need not go for auditor's expert every time. Why should I go for auditor external expert again and again? Already company appointed a registered valuer. A company has appointed a legal counsel. Company has already appointed a special engineer for valuation of so and so things. Management has already appointed, and you based upon their workings only they valued. Why should I go for auditor's expert? Only thing first I should check, should I need an expert? Company valued inventory. Company classified some pending litigation as contingent liability. So is it correct or not? I want to know. So first of all, to know this, is my competence enough? I need to check. If my competence is not enough, then I need an expert. Now the question is, I need expert. Now which expert? Already management employed. Can I satisfy with his working? That is first question. If at all I'm okay with his workings, everything, he's competent, he's governed by external professional standards and all, he's having all, responsibilities, code of ethics, everything just like me, getting it, I can believe his opinion. Suppose if I'm having doubts about management experts' objectivity, I feel somewhere this management expert is biased towards the management. Then I will go for auditors expert. Are you getting it? So what factors that are required for deciding need of an expert? The question is different. What factors that are deciding, getting it? Need of auditors expert. Both are different. Observe the difference. Getting it? Now, do I need an expert or not, first of all? An auditor's expert may be needed in one or more of the following situations: to understand the entity and its environment, including internal control. Suppose you are newly appointed as an auditor for a pharma company. You don't know how pharma company works, how pharma company operates, you don't know. Because the drugs they are manufacturing are liable for compliances with so many regulations, norms and all, international norms and all will be there. You don't know exactly how pharma industry works. So better take one expert help there. Getting it? Identifying and assessing risk of MMS. Identifying and assessing risk of MMS. Today so many new business models are coming. Yes or no? Suppose you are appointed as an auditor for Bharat Pay. That's a UPI payment company. Or you are appointed as an auditor for 197 communication, Paytm. How do you know in Paytm what are the risk factors? Suppose in a normal kirana store or a normal supermarket, I can easily understand where mistakes can go wrong. But in a Paytm like a company, where frauds can happen, how do I know? So sometimes experts are required depending upon the risk of, to evaluate risk of MMS, you need an expert. Determining and implementing overall response to the assessed risk at financial statement level. Nothing but for identifying risk, you need a help of an expert. Suppose you find risk. How to answer this risk? How to respond to this risk? How to verify so that I can identify whether this risk is materialized or not? Whether this risk turned into reality or not. Responding means further audit procedures. They are nothing but what? Further audit procedures. See, there are two standards we have. One is 315 and another one is 330. 315, 330. 315 talks about identifying, assessing of risk of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment. Risk of MMS is divided at two levels: financial statement level, assertion level. Financial statement level risk, which is a significant risk. Generally, when we identify financial statement level risk, we don't do audit, we will withdraw from audit. Getting it? Financial statement level risk. Example, going concern risk. Top management are not with integrity. Top management, those who are running this company are not working with integrity. They are doing frauds in everywhere, which we cannot discover. These risks are called as what? Financial statement level risks. Assertion level risks, what are they? In go down, inventory warehouse, controls are not proper. That's an assertion level risk. If controls are not proper in warehouse, that affects existence of inventory. That affects existence of inventory, which is not a financial statement level, which is not a pervasive level. Able to understand? Purchases processes, vendor master do not have proper control. That's an assertion level risk. If vendor master is not proper, there is no proper control in the vendor master, there is a possibility that unauthorized vendor may be created, unauthorized purchase order may be created, unauthorized payment may be created. So some wrong purchase might be processed. Assertion level risk. Are you getting it? Suppose if you find so many assertion level risks and all of them put together may be treated as financial statement level risk. Able to understand? So the risk assessment, whatever risk you identify, you need to assess it. Is it a high risk? Is it a medium risk? Is it a low risk? You need to assess it. Getting it? So you need to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement at the financial statement level, at assertion level. Whatever the risk you identify, what can go wrong, you do that assessment. Anyhow, we discuss entire this in risk assessment procedure, risk assessment chapter. Getting it? So you do this. This is called risk assessment. To do this risk assessment, you may need a help of an expert. Okay, fine. You identified so many risks. How to answer this risk? How to verify whether this risk turned into a fraud? How to verify? Response to assessed risk. Getting the point? So response, how do you respond? So 315 says risk assessment procedure. 330 is talking about further audit procedures. Audit procedures are two types: risk assessment and further. 330 is further audit procedures. Response to the assessed risk. How do you respond? You have to perform further audit procedure. Test of controls, test of details. That is what 330 says. Clear? Next. So designing and performing further audit procedures to assessed risk. That itself is called as what overall responses we should implement. Overall response is nothing but you perform further audit procedure, you found some lapses in purchases, you do test of transactions of purchases. And finally, for evaluating sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. So whether evidence is proper or not, suppose company valued inventory, workings and all they have showed you, you also verified whether this workings proper or not, you want to verify, you may take help of an expert. Clear? So this is the straight question that can be asked as a 4 marks question. It was asked actually, once it was asked. In the very recent attempt, in the past 3-4 attempts only it was asked. Either this or this. Either this or this. Any of these questions has been asked. Not only that, you should consider one or more of the following. And not only that, how far is your understanding of the other field? If at all you're having very good understanding of the other field, suppose I'm working as an auditor for this company from past 10 years. I know how valuation of oil reserves happens. So initial days, I don't know. So I took help of an expert. Initial 3-4 years, I worked with expert. I learned the skill of valuation of oil reserve, crude oil reserves. Now I know how to evaluate. Getting it? So experience in auditing the entities that require such expertise. So what is the level of experience you have in auditing these entities where you felt expert work is required? Education or professional development in that particular field. Suppose you studied a guidance note on crude oil valuations. Suppose you got a certification course from Petroleum Board, getting it regarding crude oil valuation. So you may get this development through formal courses or by discussion with people having that expertise and discussion with other auditors who performed similar engagements. If at all you are having access to all this now, you may don't take the help of an expert. Able to understand? Out of all this, any 4 points. So sometimes no, and what are the areas where experts assistance is required? This question might come. In that case, any of these 4 points you have to write. Sometimes the question will be factors for determining need of an expert. In that case, you write mainly the second point and first point, any 2 points write. Getting the point? See, remember the question is only for 4 marks. Most of the questions are for 4 marks where they expect you to write relevant 4 points. Any 4 points if you write enough, 1 point, 1 mark. Clear? What happened? Fine, all of you? So, next one. What are the considerations when you are deciding to use auditor's expert? So, on what basis you decide auditor's expert? It depends upon nature and significance of the matter, risk involved, and if at all management has used management expert, you consider additional factors. What is the objective of management expert? Whether he is employed by the entity or a third party. Getting it? How far management is controlling or influencing the management expert, and what is his competence and capability? Whether management expert is also subjected to standards like how I am subjected to auditing standards. Getting the point? Every profession has their own standards, their own code of conduct. So if at all management has already appointed management expert, can I use that expert work? What factors? These points you will decide. Getting the point? So you just check how far management is controlling him. What is the nature of the work? What is the scope and objective of that expert? Is he employed by the entity or is he a third party firm? Management expert. So, and how far he is competent? How far he is independent from the entity? And what are the standards that govern his work? If at all, everywhere I got positive answer. Why should I go for audit expert? I can happily convince with his work. Getting the point? Suppose if I have a negative answer on this, and I want to, and it's a significant matter, and with respect to management expert, I'm having a negative conclusion. Then I will go for auditor's expert. Understood how these points are different from above points? In the above points, do I need an expert? In the below point, do I need an auditor expert? Getting the point? Which means, do I need to recruit expert on my own? That's the question. And what is your knowledge of and experience with work of experts in relation to such matters? In relation to that matter, suppose for the first time I'm doing audit of a pharma company. related to some drug related research and development. Okay, I need to decide whether it's in research phase or development phase. I need to decide. So in that field, I don't have literally no knowledge to whom I should approach to have an idea on this, all that. Getting it? So, and management also have not appointed any expert clearly on this. In that case, I will have to take some additional precautions, ask industry experts, and then recruit an expert and get an opinion on this particular question which I have. Are you able to understand all this? Have you observed all this earlier? The simplest book that you follow is highly risky book that you're following. The more simpler the book that you follow, the success rate will reduce. I don't say that you fail, but success rate will reduce. Everything is a probability, right? So what we should do, we should do those kinds of activities that increases our probability of success. Getting it? Fine. Next one, nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures influenced by auditors' expert work. Obviously, the way I planned my audit, no, it obviously changes because I'm using now auditors' expert work. So in determining nature and timing and extent of audit procedure, the auditor shall consider nature of the matter to which expert work relates to. Is it relating to closing balances or is it relating to opening balances? If it is relating to opening balances, expert work, I have to wait until his report comes. I cannot start the audit. Getting it? So your nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures are influenced by where the expert work is. Getting it? Risk of MMS in the matter, significance of the work, auditor's knowledge and experience with that expert, whether the expert is subjected to firm's quality control. Only our internal experts are subjected to our firm's quality control policies. Why external expert and all is subjected to our firm quality control procedure? Generally, if at all the lawyer is there in our firm only, he already know what kind of evidences we want, what is our quality control policies is well aware of. So if at all he is my internal expert, my audit procedures, nature and timing will be much simpler. Generally, in the following cases, more extensive procedures would require. Even though you are using experts' work, you require more. The work of an auditor, the work of an auditor expert is related to a significant matter that involves subjective and complex judgment. Some complex, significant judgments are involved. There, your audit procedures extensiveness will increase because you cannot, just like that auditor expert opinion you can't take, you need to work on it, you need to verify that also. And auditor has not previously used that particular expert, no prior knowledge of his competence and capability. If at all expert do not have competence and capability, I cannot simply delegate and relax. I need to continuously monitor him, how he is working, is he properly working, is he colluding with management. I need to put an eye on him always. Auditor's expert in performing procedures that are integral to the audit. Is he performing anything that is integral to my audit, integral to as a whole my audit, which means only his work, only after his work I can do certain other works. And expert is an external expert, not subject to firm quality control policies. Obviously, since he is an outsider, our quality control procedures and all he is not aware of. What kind of evidence that we want, what kind of level of assurance that we desire of, he is not aware of. In that case, whether he is working properly or not, my nature, timing, and extent of procedures will enhance like anything. Got clarity? I am only giving you an understanding. You have to read. Though I am trying to summarize, but you have to read later on. And you need to evaluate competence, capability, and objectivity of auditor's expert. Before you are using his work, first you need to evaluate what is his competence, what is his qualification, what is his credibility in the market. Evaluate whether expert has necessary competence and capability. In case of an external expert, inquire regarding relationships he may have with the entity. Suppose you are appointing an external lawyer and that lawyer is a director's brother. So you need to look at what relationships, what are the relationships that the external expert is having with the entity we are doing audit. We are independent. He should also be independent. Getting the point? Get a written representation that from the expert. Get a written declaration from the expert that whatever relationships and interest that he is having with the audit client should be disclosed to you. And nothing is omitted. He should give a declaration, representation. Inquire the entity whether do they have any relationship with the external expert. Two-way inquiry. Ask him whether he has any relationship with the entity. Ask entity whether they have any relationship with him. If relationship exists, discuss with the expert any safeguards to reduce the threat to an acceptable level. Getting it? So definitely if some relationship is there, don't directly boycott him. Don't directly avoid him. See whether that threat can be mitigated or not. Suppose he is having a relationship with some production manager, but the work that we are dealing is regarding some pending litigation. Getting it? So probably we can take chance, not an issue. Get a representation from the expert that about any interest or relationship with the entity of which expert is aware of. So expert will give, to the best of my knowledge and belief, me or my family or my relatives are not having any relationship with the entity. He'll give a representation like this. Get a representation. And see whether expert is subject to technical performance standards and other membership requirements. Suppose he's a lawyer, he's governed by Bar Council of India, he's governed by Code of Ethics. If at all he do something wrong, tomorrow if at all proven guilty, he is also liable for punishment like how we are liable for punishment. So I can believe his work because he's been controlled by some regulatory. Evaluation of competence is a continuous process. Remember, competence is not a one-time evaluation. You should be regularly checking his competence. Getting it? Finally, once you decided, once you evaluated competence, capability, all that, once you decided nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures, once you decided to use an auditor's expert, you recruited, formalities, enter into a written agreement. Getting it? So auditor shall agree in writing, because you are the one who is recruiting. Of course, fees for this you will collect from the company and then pay him. As an out-of-pocket expenditure, you collect from the company where you are doing audit and then you pay to the expert. You are the one who is engaging this expert, understand? So when you are engaging the expert, when you are engaging with the company, you had a terms of engagement letter. Same way you should have an engagement letter with the expert. There in that letter, you should clearly tell what is the nature of the work, what is his objective, what is the scope, what are his responsibility, what are my responsibilities. I should clearly mention in the letter to avoid confusion in future. So nature, scope and objective, roles and responsibilities, nature, timing and extent of communication. We should tell in the letter itself how you should communicate with me, what times you should communicate with me, all that. And auditor's expert to observe confidentiality. I should also tell him in the engagement letter, remember, whatever data that you are collecting, you have to keep it confidential. Because as an auditor, I have to keep the entire data of the entity confidential. You are also bound by confidentiality requirement. That's it. Okay, fine. Everything is over. Finally, expert has worked on it. He gave you workings. Will you directly blindly document it? Don't you evaluate the workings? You will check the workings, whether his workings are proper or not. What you will check? Look at his findings. Are they reasonable? Are they relevant? What are his conclusions? Talk to him. He will explain you the report. Review auditor's expert working papers and reports. You check his working papers. And corroborative procedures. Observation, third party confirmation. If you want, take a second opinion also. Getting it? And the relevance and reasonableness of assumptions and methods in the circumstance. So in that particular entity, he will also take some assumptions while valuing some crude oil reserves. He will take some assumptions. Whether those assumptions are reasonable or not in that circumstance, check out. And relevance, competence and accuracy of the source data. He has gave his ultimate report based on some data. How far the data used by him is reliable? Check out that. And finally, suppose if your work of expert is not adequate, you decided after evaluating his works, no, it is not, still I'm not convincing. Ask him to work more. Suppose he is still working. In spite of it also, you're not getting convinced. There is a limitation on the scope. You understood based upon this, there is a limitation on the scope. You understood that limitation is created by management or circumstances. Ultimately, you are not getting sufficient appropriate evidence on a particular item, on a particular assertion. You will give a modified opinion. That's what. So if auditor determines that work of auditor expert is not adequate, request for further work. Suppose no evidence, you give modified opinion. Are you clear? Then finally, fine, okay. Suppose I have I felt there is a need of an expert, and I felt that there is a need of an auditor expert. I found one expert in the market. I evaluated his competency, all that. I changed my audit plan procedures, everything. I delegated him some works. I entered into written agreement. He worked on it. Final results and findings. He gave a report. I evaluated the report. Everything seems fine. Based on his report, no. I found that inventory valuation is wrong. Management, of course, disagreed with me. Management replied me, sir, our expert have taken this assumption. Your expert has taken so and so. Management, when you say that material misstatement, inventory is material misstatement, they'll ask you, sir, how come you prove? Look at my expert report. Management saw the expert report. Sir, no, sir, he is using different assumptions and all, which is not correct. No, management, as per my understanding, he is industry leader. So he is having very good reputation. He is very scientifically methods and all. Your expert is only not having that competence and all. I believe my expert work and I conclude that the financials are materially misstated. Management is not correcting it. They are not amending the financials so that they'll be free from material misstatements. I will give a modified opinion in the financials. Getting it? So I will give qualified opinion or adverse opinion depending upon the pervasiveness. In the basis for qualified opinion, basis for adverse opinion, the question is, should I talk about the expert name? If you think bringing expert name will help the people to understand better why you gave a qualified opinion, then talk about it. Otherwise, there is no necessity. Remember, whether you talk about his name in the audit report or not, doesn't matter. Your responsibility is same. He will not have any responsibility at all to the people, shareholders. You are the one taking the fees. Remember this point. So, generally, suppose based on expert work, you concluded everything is true and fair. Unmodified opinion you give. Why reference and all? Anyhow, you concluded everything is true and fair. Auditor shall not refer to the work of an expert in audit report containing unmodified opinion unless required by law. In India, there is no such requirement. Getting it? Remember, just because you are referring in the audit report, you shall also indicate that in the audit report when you are referring his name, you should also indicate that the reference does not reduce your responsibility for the opinion. You should clearly indicate that in the audit report. Suppose, based on expert report, you gave a modified opinion on the financials and refer if necessary for better understanding. If you want to make people understand better why you gave a modified opinion, you can talk. So oil reserve is there. Valuation is highly subjective. So because we are not having the technical competence, we have taken help of an expert so and so firm name. Getting it? By the way, just because we are referring about this firm name doesn't reduce our responsibilities. Our responsibility to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence regarding valuation of inventory is still with us only. It will not be transferred. It will not be shifted to the expert. So if the auditor may refer to the work of an expert because such reference is relevant for understanding. Remember, the reference does not reduce your responsibility. They'll give you this question also, possibility. They'll give you a story. At the end of the story, they'll give a question. The auditor wants to refer about auditor's expert name in the auditor's report. Comment. 4 marks question. So you need to write this answer. Clear, all of you? What is the procedure? What would be your response? If work of the auditor's expert is not adequate, they'll ask you this question, 4 marks question. You see, anything that you read, you just imagine how it can be tested. I'm telling you, whatever the questions I'm telling you, in the entire CA history final examination, this will come. Anywhere it will come. So that's why I don't tell people to follow question banks. When you're reading main concept itself, imagine how it can be tested, Getting it? If you read like that, you don't require question bank. You naturally develop that observation skills and that, grip on the subject. Clear? That's it. SA 620 is over. With this audit report chapter is over. Okay.